Well, good morning. It is my first day on this trip, and I'm actually in the exact same spot where I left you in the last video. I just really couldn't get this composition off my mind, and I didn't get the light I was hoping for on the last attempt, so I'm back here. It's now about 3 weeks later, and so far I got the first shot in the bag, and I'm hoping that one looks pretty good. But now I'm gonna make a slight adjustment to my composition. I noticed that there's a little bit of a change from when I last photographed it, not in the rocks, but in my framing. So I want to adjust my camera and then wait for the light to come up over these mountains and make another exposure. And then I'll probably pack things up and see what else I can find. So for that exposure, I ended up placing my deepest shadows right here in the foreground, kind of in like zone 3.5, if that's a thing. And my highlights were all the way up at zone 9. So I typically give my film a little bit more exposure. I'll generally place my shadows in zone 4 actually. But for this shot, the white in the background of the mountains was just a touch too hot. So I'll probably still end up doing an N-1 developing on this. And hopefully I can retain plenty of shadow detail here, but also keep those highlights. Well, it's about 3 o'clock now. Been hiking around trying to find some subjects for this evening. We've got a little bit of wind happening right now, probably 10 to 15 miles an hour, but there's some clouds starting to fill in over here. And I found this interesting like salt creek, I guess you'd call it, where they kind of meet right in the middle, and then there's a nice little S-curve off in the distance. I'm trying not to get too close to it because I'm leaving footprints all over the place. But I think this might look good for an evening shot because the sun's setting over here. It's going to put some nice light on this mountain in this direction. And if the wind cooperates, looks like the clouds are starting to come in a little bit. So I think overall this could be a nice shot for this evening. But I was scouting around here, and I also noticed that if I stand over here and look that way, there's also another nice S-curve in this area. So I may end up coming back tomorrow morning as well and trying to photograph this twice. So anyway, I'm gonna grab my gear and start setting up this shot for this evening. All right, well, I think the shot's about composed. I was just checking focus with my loop there. And for this shot, I've got a 450 millimeter on. It kind of compressed the shot nicely. I didn't want to see too much sky or too much foreground, so I think that was the correct lens here. But because it's a 450, I had to use quite a bit of front axis tilt to get everything in sharp focus. So I focused on the foreground here, kind of right where they meet. And then I tilted until the mountains in the background were sharp. But everything looks pretty good. It looks very composed, which I'm not sure how I feel about it. I intentionally brought those two different streams in at the exact same part of the lower frame. And in order to do that, I used a little bit of rear shift as well, just because they were a little bit off. But as soon as I shifted the rear standard, they came in at the exact same part of the frame. So I think everything looks about as good as I'm going to get it. So I'm going to put on an orange filter, and then I also might try a red filter, just because the clouds are looking pretty good today. So I'm going to get to that. The wind is slowly starting to fade away, which is nice. So I was a little worried about putting the red filter on because it's just a little darker than this one. So I have to compensate. I think it's 2 2/3. Let's see, 2.5 stops. So I have to add 2.5 stops to the exposure. But looks like the light's coming out now, so I'm gonna quickly put this on. Let's make another exposure. Good morning. It is day 2 for me here, and I just made my second exposure this morning. I shot a couple variations, just one as the sun was hitting the peaks of the mountains behind me, and then another one when they were fully in sunlight. So very similar to what it looks like right now. I think the third shot I'm going to take is when the sun comes up from behind the mountain here and lights up the foreground a little bit more. And then I only have 3 sheets with me, so that'll be my last shot this morning. I'm feeling like I prefer this photo over yesterday's, which is I stood right over there and looked this way. I think this composition is a little cleaner, and overall I'm pretty happy with it, but I'm be curious to hear your thoughts down in the comments. I know this one felt a little, like I think I said composed yesterday, where the lines were just kind of coming in at the same spot and meeting right in the middle. This one feels a little more organic, and I was worried about there not being any clouds this morning, but to be honest, it's kind of a minimalist composition, so I think the fact that there are no clouds actually makes this even better. So we'll see when I develop the film. Well, it's about 3 o'clock. I just got out here to the dune fields, about an hour drive on a dirt road, and overall, you know, pretty easy drive, but you are like way out here. So I have everything I need with me, but I do have to load some film because I exposed every sheet I had loaded on that S-curve scene, at least every black and white sheet I had. So I want to take some black and white photos out here, but it's about a mile hike to get out to the dune field, and I only have 2 hours until sunset. So we'll see if I get any shots this evening. But either way, it's a nice place to camp, so I figured I would stay out here. This is actually going to be my last evening in this tent. The tent has a new owner. He's picking it up in 2 days, so that's why I got to get back home, clean it out for him, and load it onto his truck. But that reminds me, the next video is going to be something a little different, something you haven't seen on this channel before. I'm going to be driving up to San Francisco to meet a mechanic friend of mine, and he's the only one in the US who does this, but we're going to be chopping the roof off of the G-Wagon, and we're going to be replacing it with a pop top. So that should be a pretty fun little video. But anyway, I gotta load some film and get out there. I'm just getting everything packed up. There's definitely a little bit of a rushed photo, but overall I think it might be all right. I was using my 450 millimeter, and I had to use quite a bit of movements to get everything in focus, but we'll see how it turns out. Anyway, I'm gonna call that a wrap on this video, but as always, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in a few weeks.